Hello guys, my name is Diego Pacheco and this is another slidecast. Today we're gonna talk about the book Nine Lies About Work. I found this book very interesting because it challenged lots of common wins though and myths that we have and it's pretty eye-opening and I'm sure that will give you lots of interesting insights and also some surprises maybe, right? So let's get started. So the book's structure around the nine lies. Then I'm gonna comment briefly each one of those, right? So lie number one, it says that people care about the company they work for, right? And actually, what the author says is that they care about the thing they're working on, not the company, right? Um, the there is a guy named Yuval um, who wrote very famous book like 21 Lessons of 21 Centuries, Sapiens and Homo Deus. And he talks about like the three kinds of truth that exist. One being objective reality, like it's true, no matter if you believe or not, like gravity, you're gonna fall to the ground, no matter if you believe on the gravity or not. And there is other like truth called subjective reality, where it depends on your feeling. And there's a third kind of a truth that something is real because all we agree is real, like money and nations and companies. So at the end of the day, a company is not a real thing, all right? It's not something that exists. So there are things that the author call signifiers or plumage, right? Or in other words, propaganda. Like the company give you like a 20% of time to focus on personal project. That's just to attract you, right? These things are just a plumage that they're just there to attract you, or you get a gene, or stuff like that. And eventually this will fade, right? And what will matters at the end of the day is the direct relationships you have, the teams you work with, and people care about their teams, not necessarily like the whole company. And that's interesting because there's the Dunbar law. I don't remember if it was 15 or 20. I think it's 15. The maximum number of people you can trust, right? That's why people tend to limit the number of people they manage directly, right? So that's a very interesting and challenging insight. So that's line number one. Line number two, it says that the blast plan wins, and that's a lie for me. A long time believing agile and lean, and here it's like beating a dead horse for me, right? But I am aware that lots of people, especially in management, still believe in plans. And basically, what the author says is that plans constrain people, and it can allow you to get completely out of reality. And I need to say, I agree totally with that. Um, Plans often scope the problem, not the solution, and plans are static, right? And the reality is dynamic. So the author says that you actually want to have your team swimming in real-time data all the time. And the best practice actually to catch up and see how things are going are check-ins, right? It could be done with like one-on-ones weekly, right? So that's interesting practice. So the third lie is the best companies cascade goals, and that's interesting because pretty much all Silicon Valley companies and lots of companies in Brazil and the world are looking for cascading goals with OKRs. And what the author says is that cascading goals limit performance. They slow you down. You end up doing things you don't know why you are doing. And he also says that there's a difference between having a goal and the reality, right? And he gives an example like in New York City, for instance, if it rains, we definitely spike the demand for taxis, but you won't get more taxis. There won't be more drivers that were before on the street, right? You get the same number of drivers, but the demand increased. So that's an interesting, critical chain, supply chain, complex thinking. The author also says that goals often are binary, right? So either you get it or not. So, and that's also an issue. And in the real world, right, work is one thing and fantasy are goals. So the author really goes against goals. And what he says that actually what matters is not goals but meaning, right? Sharing meaning, and that's why people connect. Line number 4, the best people are well-rounded, and I found that's amazing. He basically gave a lot of examples with soccer players. If you get like the top guys like Pelé, Maradona, Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and they basically say that everybody has flaws, right? And that's fine. So and this will be related with another lie later on, but he says that the proof that acquires a lot of competencies are lacking will improve your performance. Like, we have this idea of like, oh, there's a list of competencies. Oh, you need to improve your communication, you need to improve your planning. And then if you have these competencies, you're going to be an awesome player. And that's wrong. That's like trying to put you in a box, and it doesn't work like that. And the author claims that excellence is idiosyncratic, and if you develop a top performance attacker, let's say we have a very good attacker right now, it's unlikely that we'll build like Lionel Messi, right, or any other guy. Everyone is unique, right? So in the real world, top managers, top performers don't have many traits in common. And if you take a look, like Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho Gaúcho, they're all like great players, but they actually are quite different, all right, in height and weight and style of play, and everyone is completely different. So what the author says is that top performers actually don't have many things in common, right? And that's really cool, right? Because then we can stop trying to put everybody into the box and trying to have the same traits, right? Because it doesn't work. So all these issues with the competency models, right? If you look to HR, there's just 360 and people evaluation models, all right? And it doesn't work because they try to see people as the same, and actually each one of those is unique. So this is just a form of control, it's just a form of boxing you. So you can be replaced, and this is a flawed assumption, right? The ideas behind the competence model that improve it came with repair, defect, failure is essential to growth. This idea that you need to fail to growth is wrong. There's another slide I made some time ago about the non-obvious management, where I was talking about a book, Thank You for the Feedback, where they say similar things. And here the author also said that you actually don't need feedback. That's another lie that you're gonna see later on, right, to improve, but there's some flaws there. Strengths are something that we are afraid of. We often are afraid of our strengths. We just focus on our weakness, and that's completely crazy, but that's exactly what happens. And we don't embrace failure, and we should be embracing failure. So we should first focus on our strengths and performance, and second, in being well-rounded. Turn that people bugs into features as soon as we realize that outcome is what matters. So we are all weird, we are all different. So diversity is not an impediment to a great team; it's the other way around. So this is a very interesting insight from the author. Now, connected with the previous one, people don't need feedback, right? There's a lie number 5, that says people need feedback. So Ray Dalio has an amazing book called Principles, and there he has like a extreme culture of feedback in Bridgewater, where anyone could send a mail to him, copying the whole company, saying what he messed it up, right? So the author says that we have this wrong vision that feedback means who you are, and that's not true, right? So we are attached to this concept of identity. In this book that I was mentioned before, Thanks for the Feedback, they also go there that if you want to improve your resiliency in receiving feedback, you need to widen your identity and stop thinking binary, right? As humans, we have poor theories about others. We still don't have a good theory about humans. Uh, we don't know. Do we really need feedback? Is really feedback useful? There's some studies that actually prove it the other way around. And actually, with social media and everything, we're living like in attention economy. So it's not really feedback we need. We need attention. And positive attention is 30 times more powerful than negative one. So there's studies, and the book go over these studies and prove that actually tear down this idea that you only gonna grow if you receive negative feedback. That's not true at all. And actually grow more if you receive positive one, which is a quite interesting idea. So basically, stay away from negative feedback, because positive feedback is much more effective. So it's very interesting perspective, especially for me, because I worked for more than 10 years, in a company where feedback was everything. And pretty much, I was I still am strong, believer in feedback. But this is quite interesting. This study is showing that actually we don't need feedback, and if we get attention, if we get positive feedback, we actually perform better, right? That's a very interesting insight. The next slide the author says is that people can reliably hate other people, right? And that's related with the other ones as well. So that's these models, like 9 boxes to rate people, like we meeting everybody and we do calibration and consensus, and then we decide if we get raised to people or not. So there's this fixed numbers of 4 S's, right? So few people get promotions every year. The force curves, or the force curves, is like the managers give us a top performance to avoid explanations, right? So they put you in a different quadrant, so then it doesn't need to explain much. So in real world, none of this works, because they're based on the idea that people can reliably hate work, right? And hating patterns, the author goes on and on about studies that they say that, when you evaluate someone, the hating is much more about the haters rather than the people that's being evaluated, right? So even if you get top performance, poor performance, all lots of diversity, actually the hates doesn't change much between one people and another, right? And people might be completely different. So really, when people are trying to hate each other, they when they do things hating, actually they are more showing about themselves than about the people they're evaluating, right? So this much studies shows the flaw with this HR, in pretty much all HR systems that we have, that we do the ratings, right? And he says that rating exercise is not a window but a mirror, right? So basically you're just projection, all right? You're just doing projection. And he basically says that 360 reviews, they try to fix problems, but if you get 2 or 3 haters are wrong, but if 10 people, you must be right, all right? And that's not true. That's not how statistics works, all right? Try to do machine learning with 10 lines in a data set, you're gonna see what happens, all right? So actually it's just confirmation biases, all right? This really doesn't work. So he basically going on and on saying why 360 doesn't work, right? And there's basically 2 fallacies, right? 2 flaw ideas. One is the idea that you can rely still on the same lie, right? You can rely on the wisdom of the crowds if the crowd is well informed. Yes, that's true. But in average, if the crowd is not informed, and if the crowd is not informed, it will be a disaster, right? And that's the fallacy. And the second one is that errors are not average out, right? Only when they're random, right? And we never are systemized, like 6 people talking bad about you, right? That's not how data works. So there's a big statistics issues here, and basically, in the way that we get the data, in the way that we don't have randomness, in the way that we don't have diversity, it's just a big confirmation bias, this is projection, so it really doesn't work. So good data means, that the data is good verification, right? So you can ask for that. Could you show me that this was used to predict something else, to measure something else, and to work, right? And nobody did or has that, right? So that's the issue, right? So and do you see a variation or range there? Or fall into one category and consists and contaminates the data. So basically, it's really making things up in the end of the day, right? So good data, it needs to be careful, it needs to build step by step in order to be reliable, valid, and diversity. It's funny that in the age of the big data, no work can drive performance, right? So there's no way, we have local remote diversity or not. It doesn't matter our characteristics of the company. We don't have a reliable way to measure performance, right? So we don't have a good model. So what can we do? Well, if there is a survey, and I personally never like surveys, you can ask to see the data came from, all right, and ask the survey to look into the account the idiocracy hater effect, all right. If you ask to hate someone in your team about the growth potential, your hate is not reliable. But if you ask, you would promote that person today, would be much more reliable, right? So basically, the idea behind this is that you focus in the experiences rather than being focused on trying to predict, what is the feature of someone, if that person will have potential or not. So if when you stop to think about it, you see that's something kind of a crazy, right? To say, do you have potential? Can I predict you're gonna have potential or not? That's really hard to say, right? In a different company with different people could be a totally different deal, by the way. But when we report our experiences, they're much more reliable, right? So, and again, reliable doesn't mean accurate, right? But is the best we can do is to focus on experiences and trying to answer questions today rather than trying to predict the future, right? Because we don't have good data, we don't have good model. Line number 7, people have potential, right? So, and that's similar to the previous one. If we are not familiar to each other, how can we know the person excel in someplace else, right? So basically missing possibilities, right? When we think that people have potential and others don't, we are pretty much like limiting ourselves, and I totally agree with that. So the next slide is like a very controversial one, that work-life balance matters most, right? So the author talks about doctors, and that's interesting that he picked that, right? Because especially now with COVID, people live with lots of stress and really battles going on every day. But he talks about doctors who love the stress and adrenaline of dealing with complex responsibilities and even stress, right? And then he kind of go over and over talking about this idea of head threads, right, where are activities that you love, right? And you need to spend at least 20% doing that, right? That's enough. More will not improve your performance, right? And that's why some companies give this like 20% time back for you to work in your personal projects, or study something, or go do a PR on some open source framework or whatever. So it's all connect with these ideas of head threads, right? That you need to be doing enough head threads, otherwise you won't have happiness at work, right? So he basically says that balance is wrong. What you want to do is not balance work life, right? And in the first glance, this sounds like a prick, right? Because, oh my God, you're saying that I just should be working like a workaholic, right? And never stop. No, that's not the author is saying, right? Saying there's no perfect balance. You cannot say, I'm going to work 5 hours and I'm going to rest 5 hours. There's nothing like that. There will be crunch time. There will be times that you're going to be working like 10 to 1 or, the other way around. But what's saying that's, what matters actually, even stress could not be the problem, right? But you're doing things you love. That's what he says. That is I personally have lots of experiences with this, and I also realize that sometimes I can work so many hours, and the amount of hours is not a problem, right? It's actually what I'm doing. Sometimes I could work less hours, but get demotivated. So it's really, I agree with the author, it's really about the red threads, right? If you make sure you have like that 20% doing the things that you love a lot. So it's not about being easy or hard, it's about unique and good for you, and that's only you can tell, right? So And the author finishes saying like the burnout is not absence of balance, but absence of love, right? So it's not, again, it's not about the many hours you work, but it's about having a good time or not on that hours. And I think that make a lot of sense, because there's good and there's bad stress, right? And I think that's what I see when the author says stress. I see as bad stress, right? But that's good stress, like you just in a rush to deliver something, you're busy, but not necessarily that you are with political issues or people issues and stuff like that, right? So it's a very interesting lie, right? And again, try not to fire the message here, because when you read this line, work-life balance, people get defensive right away, right? So I feel this interesting, and the author is not aggravating to saying, hey, let's go workaholic. That's not what the author is saying, right? So pretty cool. And finally, the last lie, leadership is a thing, right? So he says that we trust in a leader when we get something in return, and that's we have like this confidence relationship, and we follow people that are really good at something, right? We follow them because of us, not because of them, right? Because they have something that's important for us. So we end up muting our curiosity, and we replace curiosity with dogma, and that's a really big problem. So no leader is perfect. All leaders have flaws. We could look Steve Jobs, we could see so many flaws of him, but um, truth that the leaders are frustrating, right? So basically, every good leader gonna frustrate you one way or another, right? So that's also connected with that other lie that people are well-rounded, right? People are not well-rounded, and that's fine, all right? So now, to finish, the author goes, and I want to finish the same way. Instead of talking about the lies, talk about the truth, and talk about some summary about each of the truths, right? So the first truth is that people care about the themes they're working on, because that's where the real work happens. The best intelligence wins because the world moves on, and the world is too fast for plans, and plans are statical. The best companies cascade meaning because people want to know what all they share, right? Best people are spiky and have flaws because uniqueness, and that's a feature, that's not a bug from us. So stop trying to box a people and trying to make it everybody like the same. People need attention because we live in an attention economy, right? And we just want to see the best of in us. People can reliably hate their own experience because that's all we have. We cannot predict the future. We cannot build good data. We cannot reliable proof someone has potential or not. So let's stop doing that, right? So people have momentum because we all move to the world differently. We love in work matters most because that's work is really for. So again, the theory about the head threads, and finally, we follow spikes because spikes bring us certainty, right? So we follow leaders because they are important for us. So that's it. I hope you like this slidecast. I highly recommend you take a look on the book as well. So take care. See you next time. Cheers.